Toss a coin to your witcher, a valley of plenty. That's a jam, isn't it?
It is. I thought you were going to go a bit more into it.
I did have the lyrics up, but I couldn't be bothered.
Toss a coin to your witcher, a friend of humanity. God, I was listening to that for maybe weeks after I finished watching The Witcher.
That got stuck
which is
in
the
my
show
head
we're talking about today.
instantly.
Yeah. So anyway, this is The Witcher. It's a Netflix series that came out December.
Mm-hmm.
Worldwide. So I watched that instead of The Mandalorian because that was not available in the UK yet. It's based off a series of books by Andreas Sapkowski.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Which follows the main character Geralt of Rivia, who is a magically enhanced monster hunter known as a Witcher. Which I always found when I played, because I played a bit of The Witcher 3, and I always found it a bit confusing that he was called a Witcher and he didn't really hunt down any witches.
Yes.
It was, but I think possibly that's just, it's very much a catch-all
Well, I think
phrase.
he did hunt down a witch, if you know what I mean, Phil.
That's true. We'll get to that.
He had sex with one.
Maybe that's why he's called a Witcher. Anyway, so it follows him. It basically follows him on his adventures as a monster hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about him. You've also got Ciri, who is a young girl who has. You learn throughout the series her connection to Geralt.
Mm-hmm.
And also Yennefer is probably the other main character because it's those three that you follow throughout, and Yennefer is the aforementioned witch that Nick was referring to.
There'll be mild spoilers, but then we'll try and do a section with no spoilers. But you know what? It's a fantasy series, and I think a lot of this was quite predictable.
Yeah, and it's got a bit of a rolling story, but each character's story flows at a different speed, which took me a few episodes to actually get my head around.
Hella confusing.
Yeah, because you come back to the same events.
Yeah.
Like, there's stuff that happens in episode 1, which you come back to.
Yes.
When another character reaches it in their timeline, and then I was like, I swear I recognise all these people. For a while, I thought they'd just been it'd been one of those really strange things where the same actress was playing a different queen in a different kingdom.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I was like, didn't she? Yeah.
So, first off, let's loop back to the beginning and say, Nick, what did you think?
I saw a lot of good stuff in this show, but I think it could have done with overall more consistent show running. Because it's a very nerdy show.
It is, yeah, and it required you to know. It's one of those things that requires you to know different names and different beasts and different lore and different tribal factions. It's got a bit of the that was one of the things, honestly, that always put me off Game of Thrones was I couldn't be asked to learn all of that stuff.
I suspect this is like a very book accurate show. I've never read the books, but I assume it's very book accurate. But I don't know.
Some bits are, some bits aren't, because my friend Ollie has read all the books,
right?
And he gave me quite a long speech over which bits match and which bits
right.
don't.
Okay,
I can't remember though.
But the non-linear storytelling, like on top of a fantasy, it's not for someone who's going to go in and watch this like casually in the background, which is what I did. It doesn't help that you know how a couple of weeks on the Tales from the Loop review I was saying like you don't need to start the show with that big exposition-y bit from Jonathan Pryce where he says like, oh, you've never seen anything like this before, this is Tales from the Loop kind of thing. This is the sort of show that maybe could have done with something like that. Maybe just have Jonathan Pryce pop up and say, once there were dragons and genies and witches, but one man stands against evil and he's Geralt of Rivia kind of thing. Like you don't get any of that. It just goes in, like, okay, this is the land, this is the fantasy. Even
if you just frame that first episode through the narrative device of somebody telling someone else about The Witcher.
Yes. I mean, like, I
mean, then you've got obviously the old comment of how do you know about the bit you weren't there for, but no one would have really minded.
No, exactly. It's a hefty old show, which I found a bit much because like I liked Game of Thrones, and I like a lot of fantasy stuff. I like Lord of the Rings and whatnot, but this is like straight up fantasy with there are some sort of Hollywoody bits in it, but like you've got to be committed to fantasy as a genre if you want to sort of go really into this.
It's not for people who only have a passing like interest.
No.
You have to be quite a big fantasy person, and to be honest, if you've played the Witcher games, you probably are that kind of person because those are the same.
Yeah, and it's long form storytelling as well, unlike films and whatnot. Like it's very long form. But no, I thought like another thing I would have maybe done differently if I was show running this was maybe team up, because I think there's a great dynamic in episode 6, I think, or maybe 5, where you get Jaskia, Yennefer, and Geralt. So that's the Bard, the Witch, and the Witcher, which I think is like an amazing dynamic. Like you get comedy, you get romance, you get like the sort of third wheeling of that. Like like that was the peak of the series for me, and it's almost a travesty to me that, again, mild spoilers for this, that's their only episode where they get as a sort of trio.
Yes, I know that this very much felt like it was an entire season of setup. Because I was reading some of like the interviews and they're like, oh, this was just getting us in a good position. There's going to be more of that stuff in season 2.
Right.
But I quite agree. I think almost, again, it's mild spoilers, but the fact that the 3 leads barely interact with each other is definitely a weakness.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure whether this will be a show that in the future you're like, oh, it's really good, you just have to get through, just have to blast through the first season because it's just setting it up.
And I'm sure it would, because the setup is interesting. There's some stuff that feels a bit overly dark and sort of reminds me of the early DC universe, where it's kind of it's all melodramatic for the sake of being melodramatic, whereas I think it only, if I'm being really honest and brutal about this, like that episode, the dragon one, is probably the only bit in the series that kind of hit its potential for me. There was some interesting stuff with Ciri and whatnot, but I think like if you could have condensed this series down to 6 episodes. My phone just went off when I said Ciri. That's funny. You could have condensed this series down to maybe like 5 or 6 episodes, and then I think you would have still got the same amount of characterization and narrative.
See, I liked probably more than just that, because I liked whenever it was just Geralt going after a monster, to be honest.
Yeah, that stuff was fun.
I thought that was... I liked as much as I could have done with more of the cast interacting, part of the good bits of the series was just getting away from all the overarching story stuff, and he was going after a monster and he had to think of something, he had to try some attempt, obviously there's, I think it's episode 2 he does it, and then obviously the one where he actually properly meets Yennefer, he's doing it as well, and just watching him just grunt his way through like a monster battle and stuff like that was just quite fun.
He is a grunty man, as we discussed on the last episode. He's there's a lot.
But Henry Cavill does a really good job there.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think like to be honest, like I think the Bard actually carried a lot of that series for me, because I think that them two, they're bouncing off each other is just like it's brilliant, isn't it? Because you've got Henry Cavill just, as you say, grunting his way through it, and then you've got the Bard kind of just trying to create a nice chirpy song about what he's doing, and he's just getting pissed off with him, and it's a great dynamic.
Yeah, and obviously later on in the series, it is one of those things where Geralt is forced to obviously acknowledge that this annoying person, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like, the annoying person that's followed me around, I actually do like them.
Yeah.
So they can, I will help them out. But yeah, you're right, it wouldn't have been the same without that dynamic, because quite rightly, I think Geralt is just not a very talkative person.
No.
Like, he's not the kind of, like, you almost need someone else there to almost be the exposition.
That's why
person.
I just love the setup between him and Yennefer as well, because Yennefer gets him to talk, like, just naturally, because obviously there's a romance there.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Yennefer's story actually as well. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, I mean it's very interesting from the start. It's to be honest got some of the most tragic bits of any of the three stories. Because that's another thing is Geralt being this this witch who's got like the extended lifespan and stuff like that, and he just goes about doing his business. Like the interest for him is watching him fight monsters. The interest for the other two is the story. Although I definitely lost track of all the legions and the kingdoms and who was fighting who.
Yeah, by those sort of final episodes, I was just like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, I think like some of the middle adventures are some of the best ones. Like I thought that dragon episode was brilliant, especially with the side characters like the dwarves and everyone as well. I thought that all of them just bounced off each other incredibly well. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say that there's a dragon episode, but I mean, in a fantasy, I was going to say, how many fantasies have you seen where they don't say the line, "Dragons have been extinct for generations," and guess what? There's at least one dragon. So,
yeah,
every fantasy does that.
Yeah. And I thought that one was a particularly good one as well. And Geralt and Yennefer, obviously, they always have different motive. Whilst they have that romance, they always have different aims, and it's just watching to see if one of them will screw the other one over or not a little bit. So it's quite multifaceted in that way. It's not just simple. Yeah. I mean, the show does rely a lot on quite old fantasy tropes, but then they're from they're from like a series of fantasy books, and it doesn't matter as long as you kind of do them well, kind of thing. It's
I think once you gotta get. It's a bit of a mission to get past the sort of the non-linear narrative in this, but I think if you can, then it is an engaging show. And at least it will be an engaging show, as we were saying earlier, like by the next season, and now that they've established all these relationships and stuff. But for instance, there's that episode where for one reason or another the Witcher has to take the bard to a mage, and then you see that Yennefer is an established mage in this village, even though like one or two episodes prior she's only just gone on to be a mage kind of thing. So it's like it's and
just I've got the Wikipedia page just obviously to remind me what happens in what episode, and it's even in like the same episode description. It's in 1240 this happens. Meanwhile, in 1249, it's like my god. And I think they are doing away with that now that everyone is spoilers. Everyone is mildly at the same time frame, at the very least. They're going to be doing away with that kind of way of doing things. So I think the next season, at the very least, will be easier to follow.
Do we need to do a spoiler bit for this? Because I think there's not really that many more spoilers that sort of need saying, is there?
I'll say that I agree with you that the middle episodes are better. I thought the opener and the closer were pretty pants.
But I think that the way that the series ended was quite a powerful moment.
Yes, that last scene was very good. And there was some interesting stuff, I guess, in the build-up to the end regarding Geralt's backstory. Yeah. But honestly, this is one of those shows where I think if you're a fantasy fan, you'll love it. If you're not, you won't. Like, there have been shows that we've looked at over the past few weeks which probably warranted much more of a nuanced take. Because they've got this, they've got these, they've got this and this that you might like, this and this you might not. This is like, if you like your deep cut fantasy, you're gonna like this. If you you don't like watching Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or anything like that, you won't.
No.
Because it's a lot more names that you can barely pronounce to remember. Yeah. And you'll probably end up just calling him Gerald.
And Jennifer.
Yeah.
Gerald and Jennifer.
It's funny how the change of a letter can make two people's names go from being these intriguing fantasy names to being just like, but just people at the office.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it?
But yeah, I bounced quite a lot back and forth between watching this onto like whether I would pick it up on season 2 for one reason or another, whether we had to do the podcast on it or whatnot. But I mean, like, if I'm gonna definitely give the first couple of episodes of season 2 a go, if they can sort of fix the wrongs that I found with this one, in that I don't know, maybe they realised into development that their sort of main characters or recurring characters had already great chemistry together, and maybe they'll lean on that more for upcoming stuff. But I think personally it was a bit of a creative mistake on most of this series to not have them interact more.
Yes. No, I agree. I think I enjoyed the first season well enough. I'm the same as you. I'm going to probably watch the first few episodes of the second season. But if it just goes back into more of its, this kingdom hates this kingdom, we're going to spend ages on this, I'll probably put it down and just cause, I just want to see more, like you say, the main cast going on adventures.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a few more standalone episodes of like different mysteries to solve or whatever, because that's what's kind of good about the games as well, is that all of the side quests are full-blown like little stories, which is obviously more than most games do. And also it's a book, so I'm sure there's plenty of chapters which are just standalone tales. So that's what I want. I'm the same as you, I think, which is interesting, because I wasn't sure how you were going to respond to this one, because I got the sense on a few occasions you weren't keen on us. You were like, I've got to watch The Witcher now.
And I kind of was, and even throughout watching the series as well, I did. But then like there are some pretty golden moments, which it did exceed my expectations for sure. But also, I think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. Yes,
and if it depends as well, if there's more earworms, more songs, more bangers, more tunes that absolutely slap, am I right? It's just going to be in my head all day now. I'm going to be editing this later and just going to be like, yeah,
that was a jam.